Okay. Okay, can we close the door? Thank you. Good afternoon, and welcome to the 5th edition of Meet Inquirer Multimedia. Once a month, we bring a notable newsmaker to the hot seat to be interviewed by our different platforms, the Philippine Daily Inquirer, INQUIRER.net, Radyo Inquirer, Inquirer Bandera, Inquirer Libre, Cebu Daily News, and our social media and mobile platforms. Our forum will be streamed live on INQUIRER.net with a delayed broadcast on Radyo Inquirer 9:90 a.m. at 7 tonight. We are live on social and mobile at #MeetInquirer. I would like to acknowledge the presence of our chair, Ma'am Marixie Rufino Prieto, our President and CEO, Ma'am Sandy Prieto Morales, our Managing Editor, Mr. Joey Nolasco, and other officers, editors, and staff. We are less than 2 weeks away from the national campaign period, and it is only fitting that we have a presidential candidate as our guest today. Well, actually, it took us 6 months to bring her here. But finally, we have the woman of the hour. Definitely Grace under pressure, who is still battling for the right to stand for election as our next president. Thank you for being here, ma'am. We shall have a proper introduction shortly. For the meantime, I'd like to call on our Managing Editor, Sir Joey, to formally welcome our guest.
Thank you, Julia. Welcome, Senator Po, to our forum. You honor us with your presence. Through this forum and our comprehensive coverage of the national and local elections in May, the Inquirer hopes to enable voters to choose wisely the country's next set of leaders on the basis of character and competence. I don't intend to bore millions of our audience with a much longer welcome. So Juliet, let's get down to business and get the ball rolling.
Okay, short and sweet. Yes, I'd like to thank you, Sir Joey. At this point, I will turn over the forum to our moderator, INQUIRER.net Editor-in-Chief, John Nery.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon. Welcome again to Meet Inquirer Multimedia. I'm John Nery. It is my happy task to serve as your moderator today. Today's guest, as you all know, is the second presidential candidate to, well, grace our forum. We will have time to introduce her properly. For now, let me just very quickly go through the format of our forum. We've changed the format a bit. Now, instead of doing it by platforms, we are going to field questions according to a handful of topics or issues. We will move on to the second set of issues only after we've satisfied we've met our needs. We will also, with the indulgence of our guest, end with a hashtag game. This is another way of getting to know our guest of honor. We've done this with President Aquino and also with the one other guest of Meet Inquirer Multimedia. I think we've had some very interesting results. We will also have time for questions from our audiences on social. In their case, they will be able to ask questions. We will choose the questions from social which have not yet been raised in the 5 or 6 earlier rounds of questions. So the format is very simple. The Inquirer group has questions to ask. Our guest will have answers to give. As with our other guests, we've prepared a short, in this case a 3-minute video, to introduce the guest of honor.
She is currently serving her first term as a senator. In the 2013 elections, she topped the senatorial race. As a senator, she handles various committees such as chair of these committees, she led Senate hearings on the following, and also on these legislative measures. She also conducted inquiries on measures to modernize and improve the Philippine National Police while tackling the issues of carnapping, illegal drugs, and the corruption allegation against dismissed PNP Director General Alan Purisima. She graduated with a political science degree from Boston College in the United States and then finished 2 years of development studies at the University of the Philippines in Manila. For 13 years, she lived in the United States where she also became a Montessori teacher. She is married to her high school sweetheart, Nilia Manzares, an IT consultant for San Miguel Corporation. The couple has a son and 2 daughters. In 2004, she returned to the Philippines following the death of her father, movie actor Fernando Poe Jr. She was left in a Catholic church in Haro, Iloilo Province as an infant and then adopted by Fernando Poe Jr. and his wife, actress Susan Rosas. Sometime during her childhood, Poe admitted she wanted to find her biological parents, but the idea was shelved for other pursuits, among them going to the US for her studies, getting married there, and raising a family. The primer from her office also stated that when she repatriated, she was deemed not to have lost her Filipino citizenship, which was natural-born Filipino. She also said that she had been living here since February 2005, and she can prove that as her children began to go to school in the country in June of that year. Presidential candidate, Senator Grace Poe Gonzalez.
Senator, thank you for making time for this. We will get right to the questions, if you don't mind. And the first question is from the Inquirer Group's Chief Editor, the PDI Managing Editor, Joey Nolasco.
Senator, several weeks ago, we had President Aquino as our guest in this forum. One of the questions asked him was, can he live with the Binay presidency? It seemed the president was taken aback by the question, which he didn't answer squarely, an indication, I think, he hasn't prepared himself for such an eventuality. I have a somewhat similar question for you, Senator. Here goes. What do you intend to do should the Supreme Court rule with finality that you're not qualified to run for president? Okay, let's break the question into what are your thoughts on such an adverse ruling and what are your possible courses of action? Thank you.
I remain hopeful and very positive that we have offered to the Supreme Court the truth and also that we have a very viable legal standing. I offer to the Supreme Court not only my situation, but the situation of hundreds of thousands of foundlings who are in the same plight. And so I remain hopeful, as I said. On the other hand, as a lawmaker, I will respectfully abide by the decision of the Supreme Court. But I will exhaust all legal means possible to be able to fight for our case. Now, when it comes to what will I do, it depends what the ruling is. If the ruling is about residency, then and I don't meet the requirement, then obviously I cannot run for the highest office. If the ruling includes my situation as a foundling, then that also removes my position now in the Senate. And that will be tragic and sad. It was an opportunity for me to be able to contribute greatly and in a faster way, support to our countrymen, whatever I felt would be good for their welfare. On the other hand, as a private citizen, and Sandy knows this, we've been quite happy with our lives, with our families, with our friends. We can still do many things with or without a position in government. It's just a waste. And I think that with my loss, thousands will be affected with this loss adversely. And so I would rather stay on the side of optimism.
Thank you very much, Senator. So the first issue that we should discuss would be the issue of citizenship and the related issue of residency. Questions from the floor?
Parang hot seat to kaagad eh, no? Wala man lang ano eh, pambungad na opening speech.
We don't twist like that.
You don't.
We go for the head.
Clearly.
Hill?
Yeah, Madam Senator, what's the plan for the citizenship of your husband and your children? If they remain as dual citizens, don't you think it will color your decisions on U.S. interests, such as the U.S. bases and entry of nuclear weapons? Won't you be seen as anti-Chinese? Can you live with this elephant in the room, your whole term in Malacanang? And don't you think this would set a bad precedent for all politicians?
The situation of my husband is pretty much like mine, the circumstance of his birth. He was born in the US because his parents at the time were students also. And so, just because of the laws that they have there, where you're born, that's your citizenship, but he remains to be a natural born Filipino because both his parents are Filipinos. Now, about the question of whether I will be biased against for the US or against another country, I think that my work will also speak for itself. I think that now people will be more conscious about, if ever, people will be more mindful about what my decisions are, if it will favor one particular country or another. But what's clear to me is that I will only advance what I feel is for the best interest of our country. And I think I've done so for the past few years that I've served in government. With regards to my children, I give them the right to choose. And I think that this is the essence of being a parent responsible for their children. About my husband, of course he will stake a claim. I mean, even if he doesn't have to do so, because we have Republic Act 9225, which recognizes the unique situation of many Filipinos here and abroad, that they remain to be Filipino at heart and in spirit, but because of the circumstances they have to live abroad or they have to have another citizenship. My husband has already begun the process of putting together a whole list of assets and different things that we need to submit to the US Embassy to be able to actually renounce the citizenship. It is very costly, it takes so much time. I say costly because for every property you own, after a certain amount of $2 million, you have to pay a huge capital gains tax. Please check the website. It is not a simple task. My husband can do the most political thing, and it can be submitted to you, is to renounce in front of a public officer, meaning a barangay captain. And I say I renounce. That doesn't mean a thing to the US Embassy. They still will consider you a citizen. But to go through the process, that's why people are asking, why did you renounce at this time, but it took them a year and a half to be able to approve it? Well, because they checked each and every single thing. And if I may add, I'm sorry, I know you're after the headlines. Can I tell you just a really short story about this? So I remember Mr. Isagani Yambot because I used to come here, happier times, when I was your guest during the Indie Bravo Awards. So I met him here, and I've learned about him, and sadly, of course, he passed. So I attended his wake, and when I was there, some of his relatives from the US were there, or friends, and they were talking to me, and they said, di ba, dati nakatira ka sa Virginia? And I said, oh, kasi kami tiga Washington, D.C. So they were talking to me. I said, ganun ba? Saan ka nagtatrabaho? I asked. Sa State Department ako nagtatrabaho. Talaga? Anong trabaho mo doon? Wala. Low level lang, ganun. Uy, may kailangan ako sa State Department. I said, this is like a relative or a friend of Isagani Ampot. I said, and she said, anong kailangan nyo? Alam nyo, meron akong application para i-approve na nila yung renunciation ko kasi hindi ako makakuha ng visa to travel anywhere because of the pending papers. And she said, kaninong office? And I said the name. Ganitong office. Puntahan mo naman, kasi sabi ng US Embassy, nasa ilalim daw. It will take 2 years for them to approve it. Sige, susubukan ko. You know, the woman called me. And she said, nakausap ko na, ganito, ganyan. Itong direct line niya, She's low level. But, you know, that's why I feel there's like some sort of a connection. So, instead of it being a 2-year process, it was actually shortened. And my intention was, because I would like to be able to freely travel using already, applying for a visa, like any regular tourist. And it was done. I mean, oddly enough, serendipity or what, through this particular wait that I had had.
Thank you, Senator. I think that's what you call citing the right higher authority. Isagani Ambot, our former publisher. I think, Laila, follow up.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Some of the objections to your candidacy are...
Taga, hindi ba exempted yung mga Senate reporters? Ang daming alam yan eh.
Some of the objections to your candidacy are just based on the legal question of whether you're natural born. It's hinged on the fact that you once gave up your Filipino citizenship. I guess they have emotional and practical considerations. My question is, how can you assure them that they could trust you to become the President of the Philippines and they can be assured of your loyalty? Considering that you once renounced your Filipino citizenship and swore allegiance to another country.
I think somebody mentioned it was a moral issue. And I would like to say, sa 10 utos ng Diyos, wala yata ako nilabag doon sa mga ginawa ko na natili akong nagmamahal sa ating bansa. Sitwasyon yun ng milyong mga kababayan natin ngayon. I think that my situation has actually brought into the consciousness the situation of many of our countrymen now. How the state failed us with opportunities that we could have provided our families with dignity staying here. That was a decision at that time, and you know that I don't have a long-term political decision to have made that, but to really be with my family. Right or wrong, I stand by it. I've gained so much experience, valuable experience, that I wouldn't have had if I stayed here. And Sandy's friends may know this. I got married at a very young age at 22, and I wanted to show my father that I could be independent. Of course, we could probably take a job here and work, but you know the situation here at that time, in the early 90s. Jobs were harder to come by, and to become independent is really something that was almost unreachable at that point without your parents having to give you a dole out. My husband is a very proud person. He had an opportunity there, we lived there. For 10 years, you know, I was really thinking about it, and I thought that I was going to be there with my children, that was the best way to show them. Now, if I didn't live there, I would not have experienced non-entitlement. Being an ordinary citizen, bringing your kids to school, cooking their meals, cleaning the house, going to work, and having no particular advanced privileges that I would have had here. And so I bring in a new perspective to what governance should be in our country. We always say, think out of the box. But most of us, most of them who are in government, have always been inside the box. Our problems are not new. Our problems remain to be the same. And so I bring it to a table, a fresh perspective, a Filipino with a different facet of experience, which I think is what we need at this point. Of course, you're talking to me, you're asking me to talk about this, I'm a candidate. But when they say I lack experience, please do not forget to count the experience of a person as a mother, as a private citizen, as an employee in a private company. If they doubt my ability as a woman, I don't think we have to look far. Look at yourselves. Look at the ones that established this paper. All the women that put this paper together to be what it is now. From Miss Letty to, of course, Tita Maritzi to Sandy to all your Senate reporters. I think that you will have no doubt about the courage, conviction, discipline, and compassion of women. That is certainly, I think, what our country needs. Another thing is they were saying, was it Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers? You know, we go back to Indy Bravo. They said Ginger Rogers did everything that Fred Astaire did, only backwards and in high heels. How difficult is that? But I think women can do that. You look at the government that we have now. All the difficult positions, and I will begin with Labor, DSWD, the Supreme Court, the Ombudsman, quite recently the DOJ, the BIR. All women with determination. So I think that it is an advantage that we bring to the arena.
Thank you, Senator. Again, citing the right authority, the Inquirer experience is. Wait.
Yes.
Is he ready? I have a couple of questions first. Can we? Yeah. We're expecting a question from Iloilo. But Senator, with your indulgence, I have a pair of questions. And they all have to do with the fairness of this issue being thrown at you. Number one, is it fair that we're talking about this when in other countries, for instance, Israel, when Israel was founded, the person they wanted, in fact, they invited Albert Einstein, a European immigrant living in the US, to serve as its first president. Do you think that this is a little unfair? I mean, considering the example of other... I realize there are constitutional issues involved as well, but the basic issue of the nature of citizenship and who can represent, who can lead a particular country, do you think it's unfair that it boils down to a few words in the Constitution?
The Constitution is a living and breathing document. That's why we always have to clarify and amend it. Now, when you talk about a nation, it is not restricted by boundaries or territorial physical boundaries. You talk about other Filipinos elsewhere in the world. I think that I would like to say that there's probably wisdom in the law that they made 9225, the ones who, the proponents and the ones that sponsored it, Teddy Locsin, Panfilo Lacson, and many others. I think recognizes that. I always use this as an example. Dado Banatao, who's made a name for himself, who's helped the Filipino community and beyond in the US. If he comes here and becomes a cabinet member, for example, a dual citizen cabinet member, but of course he has to renounce his US citizenship, would we question that if he actually can bring in something for the betterment of our countrymen? I think that it's a value that we have to be patriotic and nationalistic. Of course it's important, but I don't think, and if you talk to a lot of these other Filipinos, I don't think it diminishes the fact, this one piece of paper that perhaps, okay, maybe they're guilty and not even thinking of the implications, to lessen their love for the country. In fact, sabi nga nila, pag ikaw ay nawawalay sa iyong mga mahal sa buhay, mas lalo kang nangungulila at nananabik. At mas lalo kang nagsasakripisyo at nag-iisip, anong pwede kong gawin para makapiling sila muli at mabigay ko ang mga gusto kong maibigay sa kanila. Ganun din yung sitwasyon ko. Ako naman kasi hindi, para sa akin, I speak not just for myself, but for many of our countrymen with the same situation, sir.
Thank you. And the reverse of that, is it only fair to ask you these questions? When you think of the examples of Ninoy Aquino, Jovi Salonga, who lived in the US, but did not renounce their citizenship?
Definitely they're patriots. And I think that patriots come in many different forms and sizes and in many different familial situations. Mine happens to be this way. Of course, it would be too much for me to compare myself to them at this point, but I think that when it comes to actual compassion and the intention to help our countrymen, I don't think that they can count me less.
Thank you. Are we ready with the question from... Wait, are you ready with the question from Iloilo?
Yes.
Yes. So our Chief of Correspondence for the Visayas Bureau, Nestor Burgos, is on the line from Iloilo. Nestor?
Good afternoon, Sir Jan, and good afternoon, Senator Paul.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, Senator, what made you decide to conduct or agree to the exhumation of the remains of Victoria Rodriguez and Francisco and Paquito Montañez in Guimaras?
Mr. Burgos, mayong hapon.
What made you decide to conduct or agree to the exhumation of the remains of Victoria Rodriguez and Francisco and Paquito Montañez in Guimaras?
Okay, let me tell you honestly what happened here. When I went to Iloilo for a Senate investigation on the drug problem there, I met this woman who approached me and said that I think we are related to you, and showed a picture, a similarity between me and her relatives. And I said, good. So I endorsed her to a staff who took her information, and of course our lawyers, because we are always out there seeking the truth. Now, of course, I told my lawyers to conduct further vetting to make sure that there's really truth to it, and they seem to be convinced. It happened that day when I found out through media that they actually exhumed the body, and I was horrified that they did it. I didn't realize, I'm sorry, I did not give a go signal for them to do it, and everybody will be able to attest to this. The family volunteered, and my lawyers took it upon themselves because this is part of their job. And of course, I take responsibility that they've done it, but I did not want to do it. And at that point, I was thinking, Mr. Neri, why am I going through this process? Is it really worth it that they question you about the circumstance of your birth? And I felt at that point it was so inhuman to have to do that, arresting soul being disturbed, but it was the family that actually went forward and asked for this because they felt it was the best way they can help, and I am truly grateful. I had a preliminary result, and they said that I think from that particular test, it would not be viable anymore because of the conditions, the weather, and everything, and it's truly sad that you'd have to stoop that low just to be able to prove that you're a citizen of this country. And honestly, if they had asked me if I would do that, I just say, if everything hinged on that, I will not go through that anymore. Because I remember watching TV one time, and there was this great flood. There was this flood, and in some cemetery, the remains of the loved ones of some people were unearthed, and it was just there. And this woman was weeping and said, mga mahal namin sa buhay yan, tinatrato ninyong parang ganon-ganon na lamang. The respect for that, if that were my parents who raised me, I would be so devastated.
Yes, but is there a strong basis to believe that any of the three are your biological parents? And what you said, you learned from the media that they were already exhuming the remains, but there were members of your staff who were present during the exhumation.
Yes, there's one member of my staff who was coordinating with the lawyer, and that is for me something that should not have been missed. Apparently, they told me that the family was willing to do it, so I just said, how nice of them. But I didn't say, go ahead. That was actually like just right after Christmas. I wasn't even thinking of it. I don't want that to happen again, and I said every single thing has to come through me. But I gave the blanket of authority at that time, and this one falls on my lap when I say, please vet and please check the authenticity of
What do
it.
you do next month if the DNA test turned negative?
Well, the DNA test. Our case in the Supreme Court does not hang on the result of a DNA test. As I said, it would make it more expedient and probably faster for us to be resolving the case. But maybe there's a higher purpose for this. Maybe it's not just me running and offering myself to the country, Maybe it's me also defending the rights of other foundlings who would not have the capability and the money to be able to present a DNA test or to be able to present an adoption paper. My parents were responsible enough to secure an adoption paper as early as the 70s when this was not even done so normally. Usually sasabihin, anak ng kamag-anak mo, ilagay mo na lang, anak mo na rin yan. Pero syempre, di ba, they were actors obviously, no? And no, it's not my tita who gave birth to me. So, that's the story.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you, Nestor. Senator, I'm sorry for all these softball questions. But I think we have a few more from the audience. Questions about citizenship or residency. Faye?
Yeah. This is a follow-up to Joey's first question. In the event of an adverse Supreme Court decision, are you prepared to return the salaries you received as MTRCD chair and senator, and even go to jail if that would reach to that conclusion?
I don't think I will reach the conclusion, me being going to jail. First of all, I don't think there's a misrepresentation or malicious misrepresentation. That's why there are so many proceedings and debates about it, because nobody's even clear about it at this point. I'm not worried about that. Not that returning the salary, that could be something. Of course, if you put it all together, 2 years in the MTRCB, 3 years in the Senate, it's still quite substantial. But, 59,000 pesos a month to return, I think I can still handle that. In fact, when I look at my paycheck in the Senate, I realize the importance of recalibrating our tax system in our country and how we should really be able to have tax reforms. Of course, if I have to pay that debt, I will do what I can to be able to repay it.
Thank you.
So
Other
does it
questions?
mean that I also have to return and unsign all the committee reports that I have submitted?
Senator, you were gracious enough to refer to the rumors about your aunt. We have a question, and Senator Bongbong Marcos always likes to say, "Oh, she's my quote-unquote sister," and so on. How do you feel about that? I mean, do you tease him about that? I mean, what's the deal there?
It started as an urban legend, and of course, my first day in the Senate, I'm guilty about approaching him when I said, I called him bro, okay, and then kuya, and then he said, oh nga, kasi it came to the consciousness of people getting to April 13, and I apologize in advance to my cousin. It's no intention to fan the flames of the rumors, but it just really happened that way, okay? So, and if there's anything about Senator Bongbong, he's really a gentleman. He doesn't speak ill of others. So, there's no awkwardness between us because he realizes also that he's a political family and all these things can be asked about us. We just try, in my case, I just answer it as truthfully as possible. So there's no awkwardness.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, Faye. Faye is our social media editor.
Okay, I read this in the internet. You know, the internet is the world's greatest gossip, and you know that. And there are suggestions if you belong to the Lopez family. Have you heard of this? Ledesma. Yes. Ledesma of Bacolod. You heard of that rumor?
Yes,
Can you elaborate?
kaya naman sa mga Ledesma. No, but the, my ninang who took me in is related to the Ledesma. She's in Valencia. You know how it is, like a small knit community. I don't want to have to implicate them in this whole labyrinth of conspiracy theories on my birth. I always say, kung sino man silang mga kadugo kong mga kamag-anak, ang hinihiling ko lang naman sa Diyos ay maging disente at mabubuting tao sila. At yung mga taong lumapit na sa akin, katulad ng yung mga militar na nakahanap sa akin, yung mga nagpa-exhume doon ng kanilang mga disenteng tao, decent people, and that's all I can ask for.
There's another rumor, and I think this really takes the cake. that you are the daughter of Cardinal Sin?
Sobra naman yan. Blasphemous na yan sa memory ni Cardinal Sin. It's fair naman. Ano bang mga sites yung pinupuntahan ko?
The same sites that say Jose Rizal is the founder of Adolf Hitler.
No, I think the rule of that is that he was the parish priest of Haro, and he was the one. So, rumors.
Well, last night, my nanay Sayong, the one who took care of me in Haro, who found me, said that she's really close to Cardinal Sin. Hindi ko naman kamukha si Cardinal Sin. So parang mukhang out na yun. Apparently, Cardinal Sin was the one who sort of named me. Kasi parang Mary Grace and then dinagdag yung natividad. I mean, of course, this woman is 89 years old. If she's willing to be interviewed, please by all means, okay? But that's her story to me. And it was Cardinal Sin who appealed to her to say, Sayong, marami ka ng anak. Alam ko mahal mo yan. Sinabi daw ni Cardinal Sin, cute daw ako. Anyway, pero sabi niya, hindi yun yung point. Kung mahal mo talaga yung batang yan, dapat yan ibigay mo kay Tessie para dun sa kila Susan kasi isa lang yung anak nila, mapapalaki nila yan. Tsaka, hindi naman yan mawawalay sa'yo kasi ikaw naman yung, parang something like that. Okay, I forget, but you can ask her. So it was actually Cardinal Sin who convinced her to finally have me given up for adoption. So that's the story. Of course, I have the pictures to show that it was Cardinal Sin who baptized me, etc. when I was a few months old. Pero talagang mukhang hindi ko naman tatay kasi hindi naman niya ako binubuhat or anything.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. I think we can wrap up this the issue on citizenship. Let me just ask one last question. Senator, you're very gracious about all these questions, but it must hurt to talk about, your origin story in these terms. Is it worth it, running for the presidency? Okay, that's the emoji that comes up.
The other day, when I was wag naman yan. They probably mistake emotion for weakness. It's not. It's also a sentiment. Okay. While I did not really plan to have a political career. Of course, I was a student council member in UP, but we're all idealists as students, diba? Parang we want to have a part in the discussion, etc. But as I am preparing now for the campaign proper, of course, we have to put together all of our achievements, what we've done. And they were preparing a BTR presentation. Oh, by the way, can I just borrow yours na lang? Parang mas professional yung sa inyo kasi sa amin.
For a small fee, yes.
For a small fee. You know what? For a small fee, I'm willing kasi we've been paying for this group. And I'm just like, it's so sad. Anyway, so I was looking at the data of the things that I've already done. And because of our initiative, 4 million children are fed now, and it's institutionalized in our budget, that they're given lunch in school because they're severely wasted. Thank you for PDI for bringing that into the consciousness with your front page, which earned me a call from the president and said, "Are you sure there are that many children who are hungry?" I mean, the president really cared. I mean, he was wondering. So, because of that, 4 million children are fed every day, and then about 200,000 more in this particular town in Leyte. And then all of the amendments that we've done for the Dangerous Drugs Act, which makes it easier for us to be able to file a case against drug pushers. And all these other things that we've pushed, I realized that what a privilege it is to be in the position to help our countrymen. I mean, it's worth the fight. it's worth the fight if you feel that you can institute change at a faster pace and that it could be felt by those in need. So, if they're questioning now my citizenship, I'm willing to go through it because I've seen that even in the Senate, where your hands are tied because all you could do is legislate, but the implementation is not in your hands, you can still do oversight. You can still do budgets that will be felt by our countrymen.
Thank you very much, Senator. Just for the record, we the Inquirer don't see tears as weakness. We agree with what Pope Francis said a year ago. Sometimes the best way to see something is through teary eyes.
Sir?
To clear your eyes. Yes.
Can we turn off the camera first and allow the senator some water break?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you. Yeah. Cameras off, please.
Actually, yeah. I have my coffee break here. No, you know, it's really not even the emotional part for me na bubog ako eh. Because I can take that. Imagine, you've been desensitized since you were in grade school. When they're asking you about this, hindi masakit sa amin to say na, well, minsan, ampon ka lang, hindi na yun eh. It's like when you think about, wow, nagawa ko na rin pala yan. Pwede pala. That's the one that's...
Not even a black belt in Taekwondo can
Physical pain kasi, physical defense is different from emotional defense and pain. Sometimes it's...
Okay, the next round of questions, let's focus on governance, platform, her work in government since NTCRB days. The first question from our senior editor, Totoy Sarmiento, and then after that, is Nico here?
TJ, ano nangyari sa'yo? Nandito ka na pala, TJ. Hinahanap ko sa Senate na wala na lang bigla.
Oh, he's been promoted.
Nandito na pala. Promoted.
Sir na siya, sir.
Sir. Si Myla ba, ipopromote niyo na rin? Inaalas at saka si Myla.
Wow, Myla, ha?
Hindi, para... Hindi kasi hirap pag nandiyan si Myla, nagtatago na kami.
Sir, wala akong question na.
Totoy Sarmiento.
Hi, Senator Graves. My question is about the service that affects us all. It's part of your 20-point program that you unveiled at UP Bahay Alumni. It's about the slow internet speed. You know, we are among the lowest. We have one of the lowest internet speeds in the whole world. It's 3.6 Mbps. Yes, about 7 times slower than the global average of 3.3 Mbps. But before I proceed with my question, just a little background. In the early 90s, the Philippines was the butt of jokes. I remember Lee Kuan Yew speaking about the Philippines, wherein he said that 98% of Filipinos were waiting for a landline, and 2%, the 2% were waiting for a dial tone. With that background, one of the strategic moves of the Ramos administration was to open the telecoms industry, allowing new players to come in to provide, in exchange for putting up landlines, they were given licenses to operate what we call the national gateway facilities for the overseas calls, the bread and butter of the monopolist. And then they were allowed to operate, to offer cell phone services. And as a result, the huge backlog was eliminated, and we became the texting capital of the world. And now, we are one of the heaviest users of social media. But over the years, through market consolidation, mergers, and acquisitions, what we have now is a duopoly. Two big companies dominating the industry, lording it over the industry. So, as you said, you want to offer, so my question now is, kung sakaling payagan kayo tumakbo at pala rin naging presidente sa Mayo, anong mga konkretong hakbang ang gagawin nyo para mapabilis at hindi lang mapabilis at sana bumaba ang presyo ng internet service sa Pilipinas?
Maraming salamat po sa tanong niyo, Mr. Sarmiento.
Yes.
Ang unang hakbang naniniwala ko ay dapat ayusin din natin ang mga ibang probisyong pang-ekonomiya sa ating saligang batas. There are certain provisions there that will allow greater competition in our country that will drive prices down and make services more efficient. One of them, and this will be controversial, is allowing certain public utilities to be also owned by foreign companies. Our foreign ownership restrictions of 60-40 is very paralyzing, and it creates a system of monopoly. Now, we are thankful for the Taipans and all the big businessmen here who are keeping our economy afloat by investing in PPP projects, etc. But they themselves need help. In fact, some of them are rumored to be partnered up with other companies abroad, but in paper, they are not. You know, there's an Anti-Foreign Corrupt Practices Act in the US that prevents reputable companies from investing in the Philippines because with a 60-40 ownership, they have no control over the company and they cannot involve themselves in bribing officials, etc. because they can, charges or cases can be filed against them in their own countries. So what I'm saying is, let us please encourage now the debate on foreign ownership, on certain utilities. Of course, not all. I am against the foreign ownership of land. But I think that there should be a formal title from the government allowing long-term leases for specific purposes. We don't want to wake up one day and be like a Palestine wherein, you know, like majority of our land was taken by without us even knowing. So I think that majority of Filipinos still don't own their own homes, or many of them, we need to be able to control the land ownership. But when it comes to utilities, this will really help. If you have other telecom companies that say, I don't know, Verizon or other Sprint come in here, partner up with existing companies, they'll have the capital to lay down the groundwork for faster telecommunication. And then also, there should be a partnership between the DPWH, the NTC, to be able to lay out all of these fiber optic lines. Kasi nangyayari ngayon, DPWH, papatayo ng kalsada, papasok ang PLDT, Globe, whatever, bubungkal na naman, naglalagay ng linya. Di ba dapat lahat yan, kasama na yan sa National Development Plan, dito lalagyan natin ng linya, dito mabilis. So, the only way we can have really faster internet speed, I believe, is of course to lay down the groundwork, all the infrastructure for that. Number two, the government should really help. I think in state universities and colleges, the government should offer free Wi-Fi services already because internet speed and internet is offered as a basic UN right. The access to internet, can you believe that? Because it's information. So the government can be a partner, we can assign PPP projects with this, but please, let us amend certain economic provisions in our charter.
Thank you. Nico?
Good morning, ma'am. The question is, do you plan, under the administration, do you plan to continue the policies of the Aquino administration when it comes to the China issue and our peace process with the MILF? Or, I'm making it very general now. If you just plan to continue the policies, or what changes would you like to put in those policies? And then I have another question, but you could answer.
What's
the
your
first
name?
two. Nico Dizon.
Nico
Ah,
Dizon,
Nico.
she's
Nico
our
Dizon, you're a female pala. Kasi honestly,
Matagal na ba?
si Nico, di ba, Nico?
Okay, that question is from Nicolette Dizon.
Nicolette. Okay, Nicolette. Okay, with regards to the China issue, of course, the case is in arbitration now under the regime of the UNCLOS. We need to continue that. I think that they'll come up with this decision soon. But having said that also, we need to be able to re-examine our relations with China. We need to be realistic. We need to be able to engage other ASEAN neighbors to constructively also engage China to honor the code of conduct in this in these disputed areas. We also need to continue relations with China when it comes to, let's say, economic, education, cultural ties with them. But we have to stand firm on what our territorial integrity is. It's in our constitution: national security, national sovereignty, and territorial integrity. Now, when it comes to our defense, I think whoever the president is, we need to continue diplomatic relations. It's part of having amity with all nations, but we should also strengthen our defense. When we say that China is 1 billion plus people and we're 104 billion people, and we can't contend with them, that's no excuse. Singapore has 4 million people, but nobody dares bully them because they have a strong air force, they have a strong maritime defense. The Philippines can do the same. One of the things we need to do, strengthen our Coast Guard to protect our fishermen. How do you do that? Take them away from the DOTC. The Coast Guard is under the DOTC. Why aren't you surprised that they're not even, they're not functioning as they should?
MRT on the way to the Nico, your follow-up?
The follow-up is a lot of people are anticipating, well, pundits are saying that there would be cases or complaints one after the other filed against the president. If and when that happens, what would be your policy or position on it?
The president should never meddle in any judicial process. We should allow the wheels of justice to take its course and the process to be fair. We should allow impartial investigations. I personally, I'm not a lawyer, but when I see about what cases they can file against an incumbent, yun pa nga eh. Why would you even want to be president if after that, alam mo, ikukulong ka, di ba? But with the president, from what I know, as long as he did not maliciously steal or do anything maliciously, you may have had shortcomings when it comes to your administration. Nobody's blameless. But when it comes to the president, I think it will be difficult for them to have a case against him. I think that his strong stand against corruption has given our country unprecedented growth, but it's not enough. We've seen also that there are many in his cabinet, there are a few in his cabinet that need to be accountable.
Senator, to go back to your earlier answers about foreign policy, aspects of economic policy, they actually strike me as a continuation of what President Aquino is doing, which reminds me that they in fact tried to court you to sort of run, or to run with their standard bearer. What would have happened if you had joined?
I wouldn't have 4 disqualification cases against me. Baka 1 lang.
So wait, so the 3 are from the administration and 1 is from...
I'm just saying that, it's just that. Look, I mean, my relation with the president, with just the president alone, okay? Until this day, I remain grateful for the president for having ushered me in to public service, to the MTRCP. Again, I repeat this, and because for me it's so heartwarming, I did not campaign for the president, but I voted for him. And yet he did not hesitate to take me in and assign me to the MTRCP. So that started it. And it's also good to know that the president thought that I have what it takes to be a leader, to affect change, and to be able to manage things. Because if he's inviting you to be vice president, then you're only a heartbeat away from being president. So I still see that as a valuable thing from the president.
Thank you. Who has a question about MRT? Okay. Economic, yeah, please. Tina Dumlao.
As you can see, Ma'am, for the bid.
Akala ko si Secretary Janet Garin.
Our question is about the campaign, and of course you need money to run a campaign. What's your take on big campaign contributors, and how will you handle them if, for example, they will bid for projects? Of course, they will expect a return on their investment.
Can I just park that question? Let's just finish the questions first about governance. Yeah, and then after that, the third topic will be about the campaign structure, campaign donors, and so on. So about MRT, what is the problem?
The problem is incompetence. The problem is short-sightedness. The problem is the lack of managerial skills. The problem is not knowing what to do. Of course, I've talked to many experts when it comes to this. I'm no expert about it, but when it comes to it, so I've heard that during the time of Ping de Jesus, they already had experts and those that are knowledgeable in engineers in charge of all of these public utility transportation. The problem is after that, they replace them with lawyers. So they're more into the legalities than the actual specification of what's needed. The problem is obviously we lack the trains that are needed to accommodate all of the passengers that we have. The problem is the lack of a competent maintenance company. The problem is we did not rehabilitate the train early enough so that it would not have to reach this point. And the problem is the slow pace of implementing projects. I mean, right now, if we implemented the MRT 7 project, by now it would have been running. And can you imagine the traffic that would have been lessened from San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, to the common station in Trinoma or in SM? Can you imagine if at that time we already rolled out the project, we would have already the line that goes all the way to Bacoor, Cavite? I mean, that would have taken out hundreds of thousands of passengers on the road today. Not to mention the common station of the buses that would have been waiting there as opposed to the provincial buses having to traverse the main lines of EDSA because we still don't have those common stations in place.
What would you do differently if you were elected president?
Well, first of all, I will hire a competent DOTC secretary, somebody who's not just a lawyer, but who's professional, who has good managerial skills, and who has the integrity to be able to run his agency well. I will make sure that, one of the things I would like to have is to have an infrastructure room in Malacanang. I know it sounds so elementary, but sometimes, if you want things done, you just have to visit it every day and check on it yourself. What is happening to a project? There's a red light on something that's not been implemented. Some of these issues are right-of-way issues. And some of these lands that are pending in courts are actually government lands. That the president can just make a simple call and say, do not contest this. We need to be able to convene the Judicial, Executive, Legislative Advisory Council that doesn't meet regularly so that we're in line with national projects. What can be the legal obstacles here? We can foresee it. The Legislative, Executive Council should also meet, the PLLO. The problem is, even now with the President,
There is no PLLO.
There's no PLLO, and 70 or 60 or 60 bills have been vetoed. Even the SSS bill, when you think about how long it takes to pass a bill in the Senate and Congress, before we even reach that point of having, passing it, we should at least already have all the branches of government aligned on what the possible obstacles will be.
I'm sorry again, 60 or 270 bills have been vetoed in the last 5 years?
That's what I heard, 60. Please check. But the recent one is the SSS, and I challenge the SSS. I mean, I respect the president. Of course, he has to rely on the feedback given to him, and he has to be responsible fiscally. But my challenge is, kung hindi 2,000 across the board, how much? Can you afford 500, 1,000? How about your bonuses? It doesn't look good. that you're receiving this much when you can't even give out like a little bit more in your premium? How about your administrative costs? Because compared to Malaysia, you spend too much on administration. I mean, these are the questions that could have been avoided if they had the PLLO.
Ma'am, one last question about governance. Actually, I'm just going to go back to what Nico asked earlier. Bangsamoro, what would it be like in your administration?
We need to have peace in Mindanao. From 2001, from the 70s until now, I think the cost of conflict there's just conflict alone, and I think you can quantify that with emotions, is about more than 600 billion pesos. But having said that, we need to have sustainable, lasting, and rapid peace development in Mindanao. How can we do this? We should really have an inclusive consulting process. I mean, I commend the President for really making an effort to deal with the MILF. But we need to bring to the table, whether we like it or not, the other groups, the Baranaos, the Tausugs, the Badjaos, the IPs, the MNLFs, to be able to have a real inclusive consultation. Now, if they say, but that will take time again, yeah, but we cannot force it upon them to accept a peace agreement that they don't have a stake on. Another thing is also, hopefully, when we have this Bangsamoro agreement, we already have in place a Freedom of Information bill that they will also have to comply with.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the. Wait, do you have a question about platform? Okay.
Sorry.
Madam
Senator, we've been giving you so much. You have a barrage of questions this afternoon that you didn't have time to really expound on your platform. So can I ask you to identify the focus of your governance, and would climate change be part of it?
Okay, this one, the focus of my government is, first of all, it should have what they always say, inclusiveness, global competitiveness, and transparency. Now, having said that, my first priority is to have the KKK, kabuhayan, kaligtasan, at saka, kabuhayan and kaligtasan are very important, and karunungan. Why do I say that? Kabuhayan, because when you think of inclusive growth, Mr. Upa, you cannot just say inclusive growth without realizing that what can actually empower people are jobs. And you cannot have those jobs if you don't create the economic climate for it. Not climate change, I'm not talking about economic climate. So investors, and you cannot have investors if you don't recalibrate your tax brackets, if you don't reconsider foreign ownerships, etc. Number two, when it comes to karunungan, the asset of our country is we have a very young population, a median age of 23 years old. And in 2050, when China has 1 in 3, an average of 60 years old, the Philippines will reach a demographic sweet spot of 23 years old. You need to be able to empower these students with karunungan. Kasi you have a young population, but if they're not healthy, and if they're not smart, it doesn't matter. It won't be an added value for us. We need to be able to implement fully the scholarship programs of the government with the UNIFAS law that was just recently passed, that needs to be fully funded and implemented, so that every child who would like to have a college education or an advanced training will be able to afford one, whether they're smart or not. Kasi ang problema, yung scholarship ay hanggang doon lang sa matatalino. Dapat lahat, as long as pumapasa sila at pumapasok, kasama yan sa UNIFAS law. And then number two, this has been close to my heart. There should be a standard lunch program in every public elementary schools. Because statistics and data will show that schools that are being funded, like for example, by the British private donors, the Philippine Christian Foundation in Tondo, students attend classes at like 100% attendance rate. Their test scores are higher than children in that of Taguig or in Makati. Their test scores are higher. So just because they have a food program, well, I wouldn't say a lot. There's some of you here, baka nakaabot kayo ng Nutriban. Sino? Ay, di ba? I want to ask them. Mike? O, tingnan mo. Sabi nila kasi, pag nagugutom ka, hindi ka naman tatalino eh. Kung kailan pa lumago ang ating ekonomiya, wala tayong programang ganyan. We're trying to shy away from subsidies. But this is something that will clearly go to the stomachs of our children. We need to be able to empower our population, and this is one way that we can do it. So that's karunungan. And the third is kaligtasan. Bakit kaligtasan? It's not just security, but it's also health. Our RHUs, regional health hospitals, have to be complete. The 20 poorest provinces, we need to be able to put the right equipment in these provincial hospitals and put doctors. Because now I think the ratio is like 1 doctor for every 8,000 Filipinos. I mean, this is something very alarming. And then they were saying 6 out of 10 don't even get to see a doctor before they die. Because so health is a crucial issue, but so is peace and order. That's why nga in my war room, Mr. Neri, we have infrastructure because it's inclusive growth and jobs. We also have jobs generation room, but we also have peace and order. Why am I saying that? Because we realize in this country, and I think there's also too much power for the president, that you can really, to a certain extent, you have to micromanage certain things. You have to have all the barangays listed, and which barangay has a problem with drugs and crime. Now, who's going to do the survey? Certainly not the BNP for Auckland, Lambansiban. No, I will hire SWS and Pulse to check which barangays have a drug problem and crime. And I will mark it in red and make sure that I come in contact with the barangay captain, incentivize him if the drug problem goes down. Make sure that they are in the critical areas, there are CCTV cameras to watch them. And then also to declare drugs a national security threat and menace. Why am I saying this? Because all resources of the government will be poured in to be able to stop this menace and problem. There are certain things also that the military can join in, but the president should really have a strong hand in it. And I say this as a parent, because when they say a mother can probably not, be tough enough to protect their child, no. I think the mother knows what a child is going through more than the fathers, I'm sorry, because fathers are a little bit less emotional, so they really won't ask their children, but mothers would ask. And I think that you need to be concerned. You have to empower the unit of the family. You have to be able to cut the source of crime, which is poverty. But definitely, I will have a red phone, in Malacanang, not naman literally red, to say na, eto, mataas pa rin ang drug rate dito. Ano bang pwedeng gawin para dito? Dagdagan ng pulis, bigyan ng reward. Ilang dekada nang may intelligence fund ng presidente, pwedeng gamitin dito. So, I'm just saying, may mga solusyon tayo para dyan.
Madam, I ask about climate change because there's an ADB study that says
I'm sorry.
3 to 5%, I guess, of our GDP will be affected every year because of climate change. So 20 stronger 20% per year. So all your goals in agriculture, all your goals in infra development, and even education will be affected because of these typhoons, severe typhoons, flash floods. So how will you incorporate this new norm into your 20-point region-term development agenda?
In fact, in my 20-point agenda, Mr. Ubak, Mr. Neri, I mentioned climate change is not just an issue na pangmayaman. Because I remember, di ba, in 2010, there was a debate for vice presidential contenders. And somebody said to Senator Lauren, bakit climate change? Parang gano'n, yung tinututukan mo. Yun pala, the most adversely affected by climate change are really, sabi ko nga kay Senator Lauren, you are vindicated, are really the poor because they are in hazard areas. They're the ones living close to areas that are susceptible to tsunamis, etc. So definitely, as you say, you're right, Mike. Climate change will really affect the way we do government policies. Number one, we need to be able to relocate those individuals in safe areas. So government has to be able to analyze which particular land will be made available for them that are still government-owned land. Number two, there are certain LGUs that have been successful in helping their constituents be safe during a typhoon because they've been they've been resilient, they had enough supplies, and they planned ahead. And one of them, if I recall, is in the one in San Francisco,
Camotes Island.
Camotes Island. The mayor there was proactive enough that there was zero casualty and they had enough food to sustain them. So definitely, that should be part of an LGU manual for us. And we were also saying that there should be a National Disaster Risk Department, separate, because right now we have an NDRRMC, which depends on the AFP, the DSWD. So what happens is even in the rehabilitation, for example, of Yolanda, they have to coordinate with all these agencies instead of having the mandate to be able to order them to send supplies, to send security, etc. So the National Disaster Risk Department is certainly relevant and called for this time, as well as the national, the telecommunications department, also separate from the DOTC. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you can add a fourth K, kalikasan to your KKK. Ma'am, okay, I think at this point we're ready to move to questions about campaign. Okay, ma'am, if you can talk about campaign donors. You welcome big donors.
Okay, disclosure, wala sa Inquirer nagdo-donate. We're still open for donations, by the way. Tita? Sorry. Hindi, wala. Okay, so disclosure yan, clear, wala from here. But of course, you're welcome. What I'm saying is this. The real issue about campaign donation is that people are wary that if somebody donates to you, then you will be beholden to them. Now, I would say that I'm not naive, but I've made it clear to many of the donors, even in 2013, I've asked them, what do you think we can do for our country? What can we do to improve our country? Some of them are successful businessmen, etc. And believe it or not, all of them would just ask for one thing, a level playing field. And that's what I promise everyone. That I can promise you. I can promise you a level playing field, and I can promise you that if you get into trouble, that I will make sure that the due process is followed. That I will not do anything to get, of course they never ask me about that part, no, if they get into trouble. But we should certainly have amendments in our campaign laws to make sure that, I know you're in media, and I realize also the free market system that we have. But if a candidate can spend more than 180 minutes on ads, at more than a million per 30 seconds, that's 360 million per network. Of course, there's a campaign ceiling of 540 million pesos. But the fact remains that if we want to make public office inclusive, we should look at these things. We don't want to compel networks to say na, bigyan niya ng libreng ad lahat. No, hindi naman yun. Pero siguro, level playing field rin. Take away the burden also from the candidate. And let's rally also. I think Chairman Brillantes at that point had his good intentions. Talagang it's 180 minutes for all the networks. But now it's 180 minutes for each network, which will really make it more difficult for a worthy but poor candidate to succeed.
You might need to pass legislation requiring counterpart funding from the government, for instance, for parties so that they can field candidates.
The party system.
Yeah. Another question about campaigns. Our opinion editor, Chato Garcia.
Regarding the campaign expenses that are being talked about, and particularly since the campaign period has not officially started yet, it was reported in January, in fact very early in January, that a Nielsen monitoring report on total ad spending listed you as having spent Senator Paul, 694.603 million in the period January 1 to November 30, 2015. Oh, that's a shocking amount.
I almost fell off my chair actually when I
Yes,
saw that
yes.
amount.
But I never, my finite knowledge, I don't recall you or your camp denying this or calling to task Nielsen or whatever. What about
I actually had a radio interview about that with Ted Filon, in fact. Is it Ted? Anyway, when I talked about
Another radio station,
unless it's Inquirer, then I can. Ma'am, when I saw that, I immediately called some people, some of my donors, to ask what really happened. Number one, when Nielsen, with my limited knowledge on how Nielsen would conduct their study, when Nielsen perhaps mention a lot, there's a particular group that maybe have been aired of my ads more and prime time show. Okay, it could have added to that amount. So certainly the rate card would show maybe 800,000, but because you get it, the donors would get it from a media company, you get it at maybe half that. So it wouldn't really come out to that amount. I'm not justifying it. I think it will boil down to this. Whoever helped make it possible, do I owe them? I will always be grateful to them and touched by their support. But when it comes to what I have to do, I think that the voters are intelligent enough and that they will see if I'm just being political or I'm actually doing my job. So especially now with netizens, Miss Fe, pwede pa ba yun? Pwede pa ba yun na may obvious na obvious ka sa isang interest group? Bukong-buko ka na sa mga netizens pa lang. So actually, when they say that journalists are compose the fourth branch of government, absolutely, even especially now with our netizens present. But I thank you for continuing on with your work, because even the internet, it's not necessarily always responsible. At least you have a process here where you really where you really check your sources and you still promote responsible journalism.
Thank you. Yes.
Can we go direct to the point, Senator Poe? Can we ask about your campaign donors?
Sure, you can go back to my 2013 SOSE bang tawag doon, okay? You can go back to my 2013 SOSE. For now, let me tell you that there's a group, it's called GPMP, Great People's Movement for Progress. They put together several donors that give to the campaign. When we begin our actual campaign period, we'll have to be able to comply with COMELEC and put specifically with the TIN numbers all the possible donors. And 500 plus million is a lot to account for. It's not just TV ads. It will have to be posters, gasoline, restaurant receipts, etc. will be part of it. And I don't intend to be disqualified because like I'm 1,000 pesos over the amount. We need to be very careful about who we receive donations from.
Ma'am, if I'm not mistaken, you spent something like 60 million pesos on your 2013 Senate campaign, something like that?
Actually more.
A little more?
100 something.
100 something. Is it a matter of just scaling up to 500 million, or same people say, can you give 5 times more, or
no.
It's a completely different ballgame?
Of course, it's different to come up with a presidential election is much more challenging financially. During the senatorial elections, I remember having this conversation with my mom, and my mom asked me, "How much is the minimum for you to be able to afford a senatorial run?" Na hindi ka naman marginalized or a bit. And so I gave her the amount that was needed. And then she was comfortable. That's all I can say. course, in the Senate, that's a for the presidency. The reality, of course, when you have certain issues, when you have your surveys not, if you're not within the top 2 or whatever, it's harder to be able to get your sources of funding.
Okay, just time check. It's almost 1:30. Senator gave us an hour and a half, so we started at 12:15. So I'm looking at ending at 1:45. So we have about 15 minutes left. Any more questions about the campaign?
15 minutes.
That,
A lot can happen in a minute.
Any other questions about the campaign? Ma'am, I have a question here about the role Cheese Escudero plays in your campaign. What exactly does he do?
You know, a lot of people have thrown in different controversies about Senator Cheese and I. Among all the presidential tandems, presidential and vice presidential tandems, I think it's really Senator Cheese and I who worked together for a long time. I believe that Senator Cheese is very capable, and you know this, he's intelligent. But you also have to be able to examine my work individually in the Senate and compare it to his. Mine is more on the compassionate side. Even when I've defended certain issues and I've attended certain hearings, you can see that it's really my own initiative without Senator Cheese. And also, I think you will also realize that his particular advocacies are not necessarily for children or for FOI is part of it, but I've always maintained my independence. My father has raised me and my mom has raised me to be that way. In fact, that's why I raised a family abroad. And there are certain things, certain decisions I've made that clearly would not have been the same with Senator Cheese. So when I say that, when they say that Senator Cheese plays a big part in the campaign, or in a big part when it comes to my role in government, I will say that I've always maintained my independence, both in my personal and in my professional life.
Thank you. The next topic has to do with the Mama Sapano incident. The question from Myla. Okay. So we had the resumption of the hearing yesterday.
Good afternoon, ma'am. You mentioned yesterday that it appears that the President was given inaccurate information or he was misinformed. Would you still stand by your recommendation considering na, do you think he's still at fault? Considering yung ganong opinion niyo, ma'am?
Hi, Myla. You could have just asked me that na lang in the Senate. But anyway, if there's anything about this hearing, number one, we were able to allay doubts that we're probably covering up something if we didn't allow Senator Enrile to reopen the hearings. Number two, we gave the respect accorded to a fellow senator. But number three, we were able to also verify that what we have done in the first hearing is actually quite complete. Now, when it comes to the President's responsibility, the new thing that we were able to reiterate and bring out here is that every single person asked by Senator Angara, did the President order anybody to stand down? Or did anybody order the military to stand down to send support? Everybody said nobody did, not even the President. So that's clear. Number two, I think it's also clear that the President was expecting that there will be reinforcements. Maybe there's a gray area with how they were able to understand time on target, but certainly, I don't think Napeñas has been forthright also with the President. And number three, when it comes to the President being ultimately responsible, we talk about it in his capacity as Commander-in-Chief. The situation where he was relying on information, perhaps, not as an official capacity, on General Purisima, also remains. That's why we stand by our committee report. The President is ultimately responsible, but we've also seen that when it comes to adding blame to the President as having ordered them to stand up, certainly, I think that was made clear already in the hearing. more literal that they weren't ordered by the President to stand down.
Do you think that that concept of ultimate responsibility carries with it a legal liability for the President?
I am not a lawyer, but I think that it does not really carry a criminal liability, because when it comes to, let's say, a commander on the ground, you're ultimately responsible for your men, but you make certain decisions where you cannot be faulted in court, because if we do so, we will weaken the decision-making powers of our commanders on the ground as well. So I think that, my personal opinion, again, not as a lawyer, the President should have utilized the chain of command so that the burden would not have been upon him. But what was certainly clear is that those also in the different chains of command failed to ask regularly, how are our men doing? Because parang kulang-kulang kamusta na ba? And Napeñas himself at 1 p.m. admitted he wasn't clear how his men were doing. And that for me is the most unfortunate that happened there.
You don't see any more hearings? I mean, this is it?
I took it upon myself to adjourn the hearing yesterday because I felt there was nothing else that we needed to add. Now, if we need a supplemental committee report, we will submit that. But again, 21 senators signed for that committee report, so we are confident. If we have a supplemental, we have to go through our transcripts just to make sure that we compare it from our last committee report. And that's about a lot of pages.
Okay. We have a question, not about Mama Sapano anymore, but from Inquirer Bandera, please. Billy Vegas. And then from Irving.
We all know what happened in 2004 election. So under Aquino government, nakulong si GMA. Under EPO government, ano mangyayari kay GMA?
What's your name again?
Billy Vegas, ma'am.
Billy. Ang importante sa isang Pangulo ay panatilihin ang pagiging patas ng korte. At panatilihin na ang investigasyon ay maging malinis at maayos din. Kung aalisin ko ang sitwasyon sa isip ko na naging katunggali ni FPJ si GMA, bilang isang tao, siyempre kahit na sino pa ang nasa kulungan na may tunay na kahinaan o sakit, karamdaman, kailangan natin bigyan ng konsiderasyon. Pero yan ay dapat nasa desisyon na rin ng mga doktor at sa korte. Kung ako magiging Pangulo, hindi ko papakialaman yan. Kung ano magiging desisyon yan, ay susuportan ko.
Thank you. Also from Inquirer Bandera, Irving.
Good afternoon po, Senator. Ang tanong ko po kung kayo po ay mahalal bilang Pangulo ng bansa, may plano po ba kayong kumuha ng mga celebrities dahil bilang bahagi na rin po ng show business ng inyong para sa inyong gabinete? Or kung meron na po ba kayong mga napupusuan or napipisil sa kanila?
Alam mo, minsan sa napipisil, for the sake of art, hello art. Alam mo, minsan, yung mga ganitong showbiz questions, pang makakadali talaga sa'yo. Kaya huwag natin mamalitin yan. Sa tanong mo, my basis for choosing members of my cabinet or any position in government should be integrity, competence, professionalism, and the ability to be able to deliver in a timely manner. Whether they're showbiz, male or female, they're welcome to serve in my administration as long as they have those attributes. I think we've seen, and I'm quite proud, one of my senatoriables, Isko Moreno, has started out really, literally, from Smoky Mountain. And has, earned his way all the way to being a public servant, being an actor, studying, serving in local government, and being where he is now. I think this is a fine example also, is that you may not like the cards you were dealt with, but then you make the most out of it. And I think this is also for our friends in show business. Some of them are great communicators. They have compassion and they can help. I mean, I don't know, Ding Dong Dantes, I think, is in the National Youth Commission. But when I spoke to him, he's very knowledgeable about what's happening into the youth sector. He's very active, I think, even in the National Arts Commission or NCCA, National Commission for Culture and the Arts. So, hindi dapat maliitin kung ano man sektor ng magsasaka, sektor ng kultura o ano pa man.
Yeah, Ding Dantes played a role in the Climate Vulnerable Forum in Paris during Conference of Parties number 21.
COP21 with
yeah.
Okay. Wow, he was there?
He was there, yes.
Second question.
And the Inquirer was there also.
Second ba? May second.
Second na lang, ma'am. Was there a time na nagparamdam si FPJ or may sign po na ibinigay sa inyo para go na tayo sa pagbabago?
Wala. Wala naman.
Sad naman, ma'am.
Oo, hindi. Pero yung paramdam, yung bang parang, yung nakikita ko lang, hindi paramdam na parang, alam mo yung parang may ghost doon, na walang ganon. Pero minsan, pag meron akong mga hamon sa buhay, minsan na lang, may magte-text sa akin at magsasabi, Mama, huwag mong kalimutan yung sinabi ni FPJ noon, na mas mataas sa batas ang kapakanan ng mga tao. Parang ganon. Ay, hindi lumalabas na ganon. Kaya minsan, bubuksan ko ang telebisyon, pinapalabas sa, sorry, plot ng konti, Cinema One yung panday at meron doon, ngayon yun naman titikman ng panday, or whatever. So, sa mga ganong paraan lamang. Subalit, para sa mga panaginip, alam mo, palagi sa panaginip, pag nakikita ko yung tatay ko, parang palaging normal lang na mabilis na parang may pupuntahan siya ulit na hinahabol ko siya eh. Hindi ko maintindihan anong ibig sabihin pa noon hanggang ngayon.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we're running late, but we still have who's the guy from radio? I can't see. Yes, please. And then after that, we'll ask questions. JV from social media.
Jong Manapas po, ma'am.
Jong, ikaw pala yan? Kasi may mga nagte-text sa mga questions eh, si Jong. Ngayon, naalala ko na.
May dalawa po akong tanong. Yung una po sa Mama Sapano hearing. Sa haba po ng mga hearing na ginawa po ng Senado tungkol sa Mama Sapano, may napulot na po ba na possible na maging batas dun sa mga pagdinig na yun? At yung pangalawa ay, if ever po napag-usapan si FPJ, if ever po nabuhay po si FPJ at dumadaan po kayo sa trial na ganyan, ano po kaya ang hihingin yung payo sa kanya?
Salamat, Jong. Talagang may FPJ factor ka pa eh. Sa loob mo kasi, no? Para, okay. Yan nga yung mga kinoconvince ko eh. Para, Jong, tama ka, dun sa aming committee report, yun naman talaga yung pakay ng isang Senate public hearing, no? At saka oversight. Yung isa doon, yung PNP modernization nga, yung bigyan sila ng sapat na suporta sa kanilang mga kakayanan, sa kanilang equipment, pabahay, etc. na kailangan ibigay. Pangalawa doon, yung pagpuna sa kanilang pagpapalakad ng PNP, Jong, ito yung natatandaan ko, no? Ang problema kasi, yung Internal Affairs Office ng PNP ay pinamumunuan ng isang PNP personnel rin. And it's so difficult to be able to investigate your own. You should have a civilian as head of the Internal Affairs Unit of the PNP so that they'll be, they won't be subjected to perhaps being influenced by their fellow co-workers, etc. So these are the two things. In particular. Of course, we have other recommendations like to be able to standardize also joint cooperation between the PNP and the AFP when it comes to operations such as this of a national security concern. Meron pa bang second? Kung si FPJ ay naririto, anong advice ang mahihingi ko sa kanya? Siguro, kahit na wala siya dito ngayon, ang palagi ko lang inaalala ay yung mga tinuro niya sa akin na maging makatotohanan lang at huwag kakalimutan ang mga nangangailangan at naaapi. Kahit naman sa pagdinig na ito, di ba sabi nga nila, kung sinong mas nangangailangan, yun ang dapat mas bigyan ng proteksyon sa batas. Alam ko na ang tinutukoy natin dito ay palagi sino ba ang may responsibilidad. Pero ang pinaka-importanting issue dito ay paano natin nabibigyan ng pagpugay ang mga nagsakripisyo dahil dito sa mamasapan o yung ating mga staff at mga pulis at mga sibilyan na namayapa dito. At pangalawa, paano natin pangangalagaan ang kanilang pamilya. Yun sa tingin ko, kung nabubuhay si FPJ, ang babalikan niya. Yung mga pamilya ba nila, okay, kahit na wala na yung tatay nila.
Thank you. JV, a couple of questions maybe from social.
Questions from the line, Chata. If you lose the elections, who could be the next best president?
Huwag ko na lang sagutin yan. Kasi parang endorsement na yan. Baka mamaya, kung sino man yung banggitin ko, tumulong pa para maalis talaga.
Okay.
Pasensya na.
Okay, another question. This hasn't come out yet. What is your stand about the status of maritime seafarers in respect with the issues thrown towards Manila? For example, the misinterpretation and not clear implementation of international maritime organization laws by Marina, which is a big burden for seafarers.
The problem kasi with, okay, I will not claim to know everything that there is to know about this. But for our seafarers, I know that the process that it takes for them to be able to obtain permits from the Marina, I think is such a short time. I think every 2 or 3 years, they have to be able to renew it again. Why can't we? For example, in other countries, for you to be able to renew your passport, it takes 10 years. And in the Philippines, it's what, 4 years? Why do we have to keep imposing this undue burden on them to be able just to comply with our own regulations and laws? I think that we should be able to lengthen the permits that we give to them. Number 2, we should also help them. I think there are certain agreements where we need to be able to comply so that our maritime employees will be acceptable as hirees in other countries. I think that the government's role is to maintain, to be able to comply with international regulations so that our seafarers will have gainful employment. We should not anymore add to the red tape that's needed. You know, one time I attended this cruise line, and I was in this cruise line, and I remember there were women there in, anyway, one of their spas, and they were saying, alam niyo ma'am, sa marina natin, kung ano ang requirement nila sa mga seafarers, ganun din ang requirement nila sa mga service providers like mga waiters o kaya mga masahista sa ships, ganyan. Alam niyo ma'am, na pati yung mga exam nila mahirap. Tapos kami, pinagpapatalon nila kami sa diving board na let's say, I don't know, like maybe 30 feet. Okay, now that's reasonable for safety maybe, but you know, let us tailor our questions naman. You're seafarer ito. Ito naman service industry. Let us be a little bit more relevant with the questions that we ask them. That's why, as I say, huwag na natin pahirapan pa kumuha ng permit yung ating mga OFW, yung ating mga seafarers. Kahit na sa OFW, ang dami-dami mga ibang ahensya, hindi ba pwedeng isa na lang, napupunta na sila doon at matatapos na lahat?
Thank you. Do you have another question, James? Maybe one last question from Chato before we move on to the most important part.
The hashtag?
Micro.
Malaki ho yung panahon na kinugol nyo. Malaki ho yung panahon na you spent to decide on whether you would run for the presidency or not. I remember that people were excited to see you get to the UP campus to announce your candidacy. Cory Aquino required 1 million signatures to convince her to run. What was your, shall we say, the tipping point that made you decide that finally, yes, I will run for president?
The option of those who are already declared at that time and the possible ones that were running, I realized that I can offer something to the table that's probably a little bit more different and effective than theirs. Again, people may be skeptical about it, cynical about it. That is their prerogative. But as I said, we try to bring into the table a different perspective of governance, but a very important principle of governance, which is number one, accountability. Number two, providing jobs and growth. I think when we talk about inclusive growth, number one in the priority is to provide the right environment for jobs. When people have that, they will have the dignity, they will have the spending capacity, and those that are in the poor sector can rise above poverty, not for the sake of rising above poverty alone, but because after doing so, they can concentrate their energies on being a part of nation building. So, I say, it's a privilege to have this time now, where I'm a little bit more viable. I mean, people know me, people have seen my work, take a little bit of a risk, perhaps I'll make it, perhaps I won't. But when I only think now, one of the first things that I would like to really push for is number one, is to have a free lunch program in every public school. It seems so elementary and primitive, but that would be felt immediately. Number two, to form a tax commission that will immediately revise and recalibrate our tax codes to have, so that people will have more money in their pockets to spend, and then also to be able to encourage the growth in our economy. Number three, to have the peace and order room for the situation, to provide our families with the safety that they need to be able to function freely in a community. Number four, to have an open and transparent government by directing all executive offices by an executive order to comply with the freedom of information principle. It may not be passed immediately in Congress, but I would begin with the executive. Why? Because all of these changes can come, but at least you yourselves can be stakeholders and know where your money is going, how the government's being run. So that's my first executive order. Executive offices will have to implement the freedom of information.
Thank you. One last. Did you expect to become the first Filipino to win 20 million votes?
First Filipino? No. When I first, Malu and I, when we were, I remember my friend, it's a common friend of ours, when they were first counting the PCOS transmission, I think it was in the 4,000 level, and I was a little bit ahead. And so we took a picture of it because we thought it would change. So I never expected it. As I've said, you can review my life, even my choice of supporting my husband and my family 100%. I really did not think that I would have a political life. First of all, I know my parents were popular, but I never in my wildest dreams thought that I could have a stake in the public arena, because it's so difficult. I wanted to be an actor when I was young. Diba, nag-extra. But then when I became a teenager, looked in the mirror and realized, wag na lang. I could be in the student council instead. But it wasn't just political. I just wanted to be relevant.
Thank you. So now, ma'am, we get to the most important part. This requires a specialized set of skills. So I'm going to call on the Editor-in-Chief of Inquirer Libre, Chito de la Vega, to serve as Game Master. Chito?
Alam na ni ma'am to at gusto nga niya umatras. Pero, can you see the hashtags? It will scroll down. Marami po yan, ma'am. Kayo mag-alala. Tapos, I will say the word. Tapos doon niyo po yung mamatch. Ma'am, hindi po namin sasabihin. Pero, taga-Senado. Yan po yung mga hashtag. Ay, di ma'am, kasama po ko sa krimen na yan. Are you ready, ma'am?
Yes.
Wait. Do we have more? Can you scroll up?
Scroll down. Scroll up.
Hanggang unfriend lang.
Marami yan.
Okay, so
Marami
more
yan.
please.
Hanggang...
Up to walang iwanan. Okay.
Meron...
Oh, there's more. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Ang...
Some of these are really mean,
Hindi, we're giving you a choice, ma'am, to... It's either you mean or meaner. Hindi, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Ito po. Ready na po kayo, ma'am? Well, kahit hindi po kayo ready, ito. The first is Taekwondo black belt. Kasi black belt there ko yun. And pakinggan ng mga kaibigan ni Ma'am Black Belter.
Can't stop me.
Can't stop me. Yun. Tennis court. Diyan daw, ayon sa nasagap naming balita
Oo nga.
diyan daw kayo nagkakilala ni...
Ayan, Poppy
Diyan nagkakilala si Mama at saka si Sir, si Mr. Lamansari. Ma'am, ano ba dapat first time ba? Hindi.
Sa akin lang. Siya hindi. Kamukha siya ni Rico yan eh. No?
So ma'am, itong susunod, kinilangan nyo ba? Ever Bilena. Yan daw yung favorite, ni ma'am. Ever Bilena.
Push. Kasi para magkaroon ng dating ng content.
Ang susunod po, and related sa sinabi nyo kina, Max Alvarado, Paquito Diaz.
Ang mean mo.
Nung bata si ma'am, nung nagtatangkaraw siya, nagbalak siya maging artista. Totoo ba yan, ma'am? Anong role niyo nun, ma'am?
Either kapitbahay ni Max Alvarado.
Kapitbahay ni Max Alvarado.
O anak ni Paquito Diaz. I get the hint. Yun yung pek ko.
At least hindi kinulpe, ma'am, ni Max Alvarado.
Anak ko kapitbahay.
Susunod po natin, Gabi Concepcion. At i-explain ni ma'am mamaya kung...
Lumayo ka. Ay, mga Gabi Concepcions of this world, di ba? No, it's cute.
Si Gabi is...
No, he's very cute. I mean, you know, when we were teenagers, of course, he was the matinee idol with Alfie Amido and Albert Martinez, di ba?
Ma'am, ba't tinuro niyo si...
Na-sir ka na ganyan.
Hindi namin.
Si Sandy, ano? Sorry. Talaga eh, di ba?
Pinoy.
Ayoko.
Mula sa puso.
Bongbong Marcos.
Ano ba? Ayoko. Alfred.
Tagal mag-isip ni ma'am.
Ang dami nito eh. Talaga lang. Sayang naman.
Baka meron kayong gusto rin naisip pa. Pwede rin.
Walang iwanan.
Joseph Estrada. Joseph R. Estrada.
Wala akong gusto dito eh. Ninong lang ang hashtag ko sa kanya.
Ninong, hashtag Ninong. Ito mga tatlo sila ulit. Kanina dalawa ito tatlo. Rizalito David, Kit Tata, Estrella Elamparo. Pinakits na namin, ma'am.
Asa ka pa.
Mar Rojas.
Make me happy.
BP Binay.
Make me happier.
Ang win mo. Talaga lang.
Rodrigo Duterte.
Tinatanong niyo ako. Uy, nakakaloka.
Confidentially beautiful with a heart.
MRT and ED sa traffic. Pinakage na rin namin.
Oo. Nakakaloka.
And yung last, di ko na lang po tama pag-pronounce ko, si Borgen. Borgen ba? Borgen?
Yung aso ko?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Ano bang breed niya, ma'am? Borgen. Ano bang breed niya, ma'am?
Belgian something.
French speaking pala itong aso niya, ma'am.
Lab. Pero hindi naman talaga siya lab.
Oo nga, Belgian siya, hindi siya lab.
Oo.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you
Pwede
very
ba
much.
magbigay ng closing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Kasi,
Yes.
ay, Mr. Nery, sorry.
Yes, please. We'd like to ask our guest of honor to say a few words, and after that, we'll have closing remarks from our group CEO. So, Senator?
I'd like to give a short tribute to a woman also who's given the direction for the Inquirer, Miss Letty, who recently passed. You know, I went back to what she said, and she said that that the paper, and this I would not want to be able to misquote her. She said that I want the Inquirer to be a feeling newspaper. Not a touchy-feely type of newspaper, but to be able to put a face into the readers and the people that are being featured. Stories with a human face. And I remember also another quote that says that I became a journalist because I wanted to become close to the heart of the world as possible. So these are the guiding things that remind me of your role in nation building. They said if you want to be able to affect change, then you do it through journalism. And I think that's true. You know, when they say that the print material is probably not as widely read as the internet, I beg to disagree. In every radio program that I get interviewed in every radio station that I visit in the province, what they have there are 2 national newspapers, or maybe even 1. So you set the tone for the national debate and the discourse. And I think that you have a huge responsibility in your hands. And with the tradition that was started by the brave women here in the Inquirer, I think that you will be able to help us speed up growth, progress, accountability, and transparency in our country if we do not waver and we do not compromise. So I appeal to you, not just for myself, but for the coming generations of Filipino, to always remain true to your commitment, to do what you are doing, because if other branches of government fail, we know that we can at least rely on you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, in the presence of our Guarantor of Editorial Independence, MRP, we'd like to call on our Group CEO, the driving force behind the Inquirer Group, Sandy Prieto Romualdez, for some closing remarks.
Closing remarks. Talked about
Senator Grace, as John and Juliet had mentioned, this was 6 months wait in the making, and I think it was worth the wait. Thank you so much for being so game and being so open and engage us with this process. We saw through your answers the sincerity in your heart to want to serve, and we celebrated our 30th year, and thank you for the tribute you had to Letty. Really, around the words, in being able to have the power to know and courage to change. And I think what is central there is really us coming together and being able to know that we must be accountable and be able to do what it takes to be able to move the country forward and for a better Philippines. So can we again, I'd like to close this by giving you a grito. We already presented you our 30th book, but this is special, and the mug from the central desk. It quotes Rina David, and in a column of hers where she says, "When one has hope, hope has everything." So if we can have presented. Si Jong, can we invite you, Jong, to receive this shirt also? Si Jong, nasaan? Jong, halika.
This is our exchange.
Okay.
Si Jong, nasa si Jong? Oh, ayan.
Yeah, kasha.
Palito na lang natin. This is actually designed by my brother, Ronnie.
Ah, okay. Ayan, si Jong.
Jong, ikaw pala yan.
Yeah.
Ginawa to ni Ronnie po para sa team Manila.
Oh,
okay. Pakilagay na lang sa ganyan. Sa
So on that note, I would like to thank you, and this brings to a close our 5th Meet Inquirer Multimedia Forum. Thank you and good afternoon.